Hello and welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It's been a while, but the original Friday Club is back together, and that means I'm joined. My name is Laura Bradburn. I'm joined by Tony Haggerty. How you doing, Tony?
I'm very well, Laura. Yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. Jim, how you doing?
Just getting over COVID at the moment, but getting there. Happy New Year, Laura. Happy New Year, Tony. Happy New Year to
Happy New Year.
everyone else looking at an Acsom.
I always wonder when's too late to keep saying that, but
it's never too late. Just keep saying it. It's never too late. Just keep saying it.
I think the first
September.
the first
September
week
the 10th.
cut-off point, isn't it? First week, okay, it's acceptable.
September the 10th.
I got some decent time off over the festive period and felt very guilty going back to work on the 5th of January saying Happy New Year to a bunch of folk that had already been working for 4 days before me. But
when you're retired, you can say Happy New Year all year. That's all these people say it's really weird between Christmas and New Year. That's retiral. That's all the time. It's just, what day is it? Who are we?
It's just a perpetual Christmas, New Year week.
It's festive season, yeah.
I've got a lot of years before that, Jim, so cheers for that.
Oh, you'll love it when it comes. It's good. I digress, sorry.
Well, it's good to see you and it's good to see everybody in the chat. Thanks for joining us today. I did wonder, Tony, about what we were going to talk about. And obviously we will get to the guys who have come in, our new Japanese stars. I actually contemplated wearing my Japan shirt today because I now can't decide whose name to get in the back. But I thought we would start today with who's heading for the exit door. First being young Ewan Henderson. Now, I've always been a fan of Ewan Henderson, but I think it's fair to say he was at a point in his career where backing himself to move on for a chance at first team football was a good option for him. So a couple of questions for you. Do you think it's a wise decision by Celtic to let him go? And then secondly, for him, do you think it's a good move for him?
Okay, we'll take the first one first. We will find in the fullness of time if it's a wise move by Celtic, but I think at this moment in time the manager can't guarantee him a game of football, and he's had that chat with him. He maybe doesn't see where he fits in. That's not a slight on his ability. There's just better players at the club at the minute, and he might play bit parts like he did against Betis, all that kind of stuff. But I think Ewan Henderson, for progression, wants to play regular first-team football, and he's following the same road as his brother, who went to Hibs, won the Scottish Cup and didn't do too badly after that. Went to Italy and impressed as well. So good luck to him. You know, a lot of people say it's another young player Celtic are letting go, you know, and promising young player. And as I say, time will tell if Celtic rue that decision or not. But I think at this moment in time, you trust the manager, don't you? And he's thinking. And I also think as well that, what was the second part of the question?
How do you think he's going to manage? Is it a good move for him, do you think? Getting to Hibs? I
think any footballer wants to play football, Laura. They don't want to sit in the stands. And good on him for taking it and not seeing it as a step down or a step sideways. I think this young boy wants to play football. And the bits that he's played for Celtic, he has impressed. And he's did really well. And I think all the Celtic supporters will wish him all the best. And I think he's in safe hands with Sean Maloney, because I think Sean Maloney's an up-and-coming young football manager and could be a right good one in the making. So I think he goes with everybody's blessing, because he didn't do too much wrong when he played for Celtic's first team, and a lot of Celtic supporters might want to see more of him. But I think the direction that we're going under Ange at the minute tells you that it's just not possible for Ange to guarantee him first team football, which is why he's decided to let him leave the club.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. Jim, your thoughts on it? Like, it was one of those ones, I think it hit me with a bit of disappointment to see him going. Not that I thought he had a realistic chance of really getting into the first team, but what was your thoughts when you saw he'd made the move, both, you know, in terms of what it cost Celtic and what Hibs are gaining from it?
I think what you just said there, Laura, hits the nail on the head in terms of you don't see him come into the team. My understanding is there's something like 35 players in the first team squad. So you have to draw a line somewhere. And I think as fans, I think we tend to be quite simplistic. Sign him, sign him, sign him, sign him, sign him. Money doesn't matter. It's okay. Don't let him go, don't let him go, don't let him go. So you have to draw a line. So what's the number? You know, I don't know what the number is, but I'd have thought 35 is too many. So what is the number 25 and have some people on loan or whatever it is? I mean, I think luck plays a huge part in football, like it does in life, and it's about giving you a chance. And obviously, we've spoken about Mikey Johnson in the past, but I think this is similar to Mikey Johnson, even though he's had much less game time than Mikey Johnson. And I think it's just unfortunate. At Celtic, every game's a must-win game, really, and I think it's hard to bring a young guy in must-win games. And I think if you look back on it, when we're going for 9 in a row, if COVID hadn't happened, I think we'd have won the league pretty early. We'd have maybe had half a dozen games. It didn't mean anything. And I thought that would have been the time to see you and Henderson, a Mikey Johnson, a Karamoko, Dembele, Klamala, whoever it was. So that didn't happen. Didn't get the chance. Then we're into the going for 10 in a row season. So you're never going to give young guys a game then. Then when it doesn't, then when we don't win the 10 and we've got about 10, 12 games, it don't matter. John Kennedy obviously didn't fancy him playing either. So I think he had to go from a Celtic point of view. I think that's just the way it goes in football, that it's quite a ruthless business. I don't think there's any room for sentiment. He's never been a standout when he's played. And I think, as Tony says, that you have to trust in Ange. Ange sees the guy in training every single day. If he's good enough, he'd be in the team. So you don't, I mean, for anyone to play for Celtic's first team, they must be a very good player. You know, when you read comments about people, this guy's a dud. Nonsense. You know, he's obviously a very, very good player. And under different circumstances, he could have been a regular Celtic player. But hey-ho, that's just luck, and that's the way it goes. And with a squad of 35, I think you have to draw a line. And if that line's at, say, 26, 27, is he the best 26, 27? Obviously, Ange doesn't think so. From the lad's point of view, I think it's a brilliant move to go to Hibs if he's getting first-team football. As Tony said, his brother didn't do him any harm playing at Hibs. Hibs are one of the better teams in the country. I think it'd be different if he went to Livingston or St Johnstone or something like that. So Hibs is a good team. They should be competing. Hopefully he gets the game time, and hopefully he goes on to have a good career. And I think everyone at Celtic would wish him well when it comes. And also, I think it's good we're loaning players out to other SPFL teams, because, you know, if we were thinking of bringing people back, like I'm sure you can go into the lad Shaw, that they've had some games at a level we want them to play at. Plus, it might maybe do a wee bit of damage to our big rivals, possibly. So, yeah, I think it's all good. Yeah, nothing to get too down about the you and Henderson move.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And Tony, I think what Jim says there is right. It's a numbers game at the end of the day, and having too many in the squad is going to be detrimental. We've seen what happens elsewhere if you don't manage your finances properly and appropriately. But I think to bring another point into that as well is what's encouraging about it is we're not getting rid of, you know, a left back when we still need left backs. We're not getting rid of a centre back when we still need centre backs. We're getting rid of a young guy who, while he showed potential, while he was, you know, probably could have been given a chance to progress into the Celtic team. There's no doubt that during this transfer window we've made upgrades in the positions he would have been challenging for. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Of course it is, and let's be honest, this window was always going to be important. There's just a different feel to it. You know, the way Celtic have conducted their early bit of business with the 3 Japanese players as well. We are now fine-tuning the squad where we will have a starting 11 that's as strong as we can get it, and a substitutes bench which is strong as well. We've not had that. Now Angie's starting to make inroads in that, and he's clearly asked to bring in players, and then he's clearly looked around. Jim said it there, that, you know, the manager does watch these players in training, so we're now starting to do what big clubs should do. Get rid of players that, whilst they might be good players, they're only going to be bit part players or fringe players or no play any part at all. So you have to look to get them off the wage bill if you're going to bring in healthy competition for places in every position, or you want the strongest 11 possible and the strongest bench that you can have at any given time. And this is what Ange's doing now. We always said it was going to be a 1, 2, 3 window kind of, you know, this is the second phase, if you want to call it that, of the development or the building of the beautiful house that he's spoken about in the past. And I'm like Jim, I'm not distraught that Henderson's leaving. I'm not distraught that Shaw's been sent on loan to another Scottish Premiership club, because in the eventuality that you do bring them back, they'll know the terrain, they'll know where they're heading, they'll know all the grounds that they're going to be playing at. I think the likes of Shaw is going to work in a sense that Ryan Christie went to Aberdeen, became a star, came back and then made an impact at Celtic. Ayer went to Kilmarnock, came back and made an impact, and Soro's just, for me, Soro just wasn't going to cut it as a Celtic player. Made an initial start, decent, star shone a wee bit bright. Everybody get kind of carried away, but I trust the manager implicitly now. And he is a numbers game, and it is a ruthless business, and good on him for being ruthless and not being sentimental. He's turning around and saying to guys, it's not going to happen here. I think it'd be better if you go elsewhere and look for first team football or whatever, because I want to work with a tight, Jim said, don't know the number, 26, 27, but I want a strong 26, 27. So when you rotate that squad, you are bringing in guys who are just as good as the guy that are coming in to replace. I think that's what Ange's working towards.
Yeah, I think that's entirely right.
I think it's nothing personal, it's just business at the end of the day. And what I've said before is that if you're a good manager, you're looking at every single player in your first 11 and want to bring in somebody better. And that goes for the whole squad. So you want the best, as we said, 25, 26, 27 players possible. Do we have that just now? Chances are we don't. So that's Ange's job to try and go out and do that. And I think behind the scenes, I think Ange's pretty much a hard man behind the scenes. I think when you see in front of the camera, he's like a cuddly dad figure. Behind the scenes, he won't mess about. He won't kind of like stand for any nonsense. So I don't think it's a personal thing. It's in terms of we draw a line and you, I think, just doesn't make the cut.
Jim, I think he's single-minded and he's focused and he's driven, isn't he?
Aye,
you can just laser like. So as you say, and I'm not saying in front of the cameras it's an act, but it's a different Ange you'll see in the dressing room to the one that presents himself, in front of the TV cameras and the media.
You can see it in his eyes at times. You think, don't mess with him. He's
I've tried
to put a jumper off and he'll sort you out. Yeah.
I've tried to deliberately avoid the mate or the kind of Walter Smith stare, because you crumble if that happens.
Unless you're Declan, of course. Unless you're Declan, Daisy Barnes.
Declan's his stalker, isn't he?
Declan's getting the positive mate these days, isn't he?
He's his wee mate.
Jim, I'm going to pose this question to you. It's probably a difficult one, but I know I like giving you the difficult ones. Ewan Boy Martin on YouTube's commented, and thanks everybody for commenting. Guys, do you think our board are finally getting things right? Credit where it's due, but they need to connect with the fans more and be more open. It's an interesting question, I think, because I think we've all been very critical, and as you, Jim, have said yourself, it's very easy to forget these things when things are going well on the pitch. How much do you think of these signings coming in that look like they might be the right way to go, the players going out, how much of that is down to a change in attitude, do you think, from the board, or are they being forced into these changes of attitude by the manager, do you think?
First thing, I saw you on Acsom, thought it was very good. Well done, that man. The board, in an ideal world, you wouldn't know who's on the board. Mm-hmm. So in the one hand, if people are saying, well, this guy, Nicholson, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Went to sleep there for a second. Michael Nicholson, is it? Michael Nicholson.
Yeah.
Some people are saying, well, he should be a bit more visible. No, he shouldn't. Just stay in the background, out the road, and if Ange wants some money for players, try and get the money for them. And that'll be the proof in the pudding. You don't really want to hear about people on the board. You want to hear about Ange and the team playing well and moving forward. Ange made the point after the first transfer window that maybe he wasn't forceful enough. I think over the last few months he's possibly been forceful enough. And he speaks very highly of Michael Nicholson as well. So while it's dead easy to talk about the board in its totality, again, we don't know what the board actually does. And it's, but Michael Nicholson is meant to be the kind of head kiddie on the board, the main contact with Ange. So to have got the 3 Japanese signings in before the 1st of January was astonishing. I think everyone's astonished by that. So I think it's kind of early to judge or to try and answer the question you've just posed there. So see avoiding it. And I think we'll see where we are come the end of the transfer window. And I think if we come out at the end of the transfer window feeling pretty good, then I think that has to reflect positively on Michael Nicholson. And as Ewan then said there, I think you have to give them credit where it's due. You know, if we ended up getting to the last day of the transfer window in a similar position to the previous years where we're scrambling about, then you would have to have a go at them. But I think getting the 3 Japanese guys in pretty quickly. And think about transfers, they're incredibly complex things. And I think as fans, again, we have a very simplistic view. I mean, there's all this hoo-ha last week about Nathan Patterson, how much he went for and all this kind of stuff. And they are very complex. You know, how much money is up front, and is it depending on how many games you play, whether you qualify for the Champions League and all this kind of stuff. So it's a very complex issue. You don't just go out and sign someone. And it's not Ange that would do that. That's where Michael Nicholson comes in, I assume, and his legal background, you know, to make sure all these things are kind of tied up. And you're talking, we were talking before about books before we came on there. I think Jock Brown's books, fascinating. All the things he had to do behind the scenes to get the players he had to get. And from a fan's point of view, you think, well, we just went out and signed Paul Lambert, good, without knowing how complex that was and how many things were involved in kind of doing that. So hats off to Michael Nicholson for getting the guys in, make sure the money's there. Again, you mentioned earlier, Laura, about money. You have to be careful with the money. And I'm sure we'll come on to things like Jota and Carter Vickers and all that. You can't just keep spending money because, you know, liquidation awaits if you do things like that. So you have to be careful with the money. Michael Nicholson has to balance the books. We're still trying to go over COVID. It's still very much there. Who knows? This could go on and play in front of 500 people. That'll have a serious effect. So you have to balance the books at the end of the day. If you don't balance the books, you're in trouble. So that's his main focus. However, Ange is all about getting guys on the park. But Ange will understand that as well. And that I've been encouraged by the fact that Ange said good things about Michael Nicholson. He didn't have to say good things. But he did say good things, and he maybe didn't say that many good things about Don Mackay. So who knows what's going on in the background? But to answer the question that you posed there, I think the fact we brought these guys in so early, I think that bodes well for the future.
Yeah, I think it does bode well for the future. Tony, it's a difficult thing to judge. I think, as Jim says, we don't really know what goes on in the background, but you can't help but feel there has been a change in attitude, whether it's been Ange that's brought it round or whatever. You know, people say we're getting too excited about the new signings and things like that. I'm don't get me wrong, I've been on the YouTube clips like everybody else, but I think what's excited me about it is, as Jim says, getting them in early, because you know then that you give them the best chance to succeed. They're going to have, okay, not a pre-season or anything like it, but they're going to have a few weeks to bed in and get used to their surroundings before we throw them into the melting pot.
Laura, we brought them in Hogmanay. The transfer window hadn't even opened, and Celtic brought in 3 Japanese players. When was the last time Celtic did any kind of ruthless transfer business like that? So it's just felt different since Ange came. Since it goes in more towards it, Jim said, maybe I wasn't forceful enough. You know, there's been a real sea change in the way that, and I think Ange is grasping the nettle here and thinking, we're building for the Champions League, whether it be straight through or the qualifiers. He's trying to assemble a team that is good for both, you know, to go straight in and compete, or to at least be fiercely competitive in the qualifiers, which Celtic have never did in the January. So I think this is a real kind of mindset as well. And fair play to Michael Nicholson. I agree with Jim. He should be a silent partner and stump up the dough when he has to, but be prudent with it. So it's a good start. It's a really exciting start. I think the fans have to say, hat tip to him. Keep it coming if you can, but within reason, as Jim says. See if Celtic do 2 things in this transfer window, but they don't have to because they've got the options to buy at the end of the season. But see if they could secure Jota and Carter Vickers on permanent deals. I think the fans would be delighted with that, and they would be delighted with Nicholson's part and Ange's part in it. You know, because as Jim says, you can't just go about sign this and that, you know what I mean? But see if they get those 2 players in January. No pressing necessity for it, but I think the Celtic fans would turn around and say, that's a decent window. And got some players out that they want to cut adrift. And I think you would be well entitled to say, great, well done. It's been a right good start for Michael Nicholson, and you have to give credit where it's due. But there just seems a sea change and a mentality change in the way Celtic are doing business in January. And I can only assume that Ange's played a large part in that, because he's asked for those 3 Japanese players. They've been signposted for months. They've been rumoured to be coming for months. And then all of a sudden, in one day, gave the Celtic fans a great start to the Happy New Year. There's a real feel-good factor at Celtic just now. Real kind of spirit coursing through, and good news week kind of thing every day. So keep it going.
I think
also,
that's
Laura,
entirely right,
just to finish that point, I think also it's very complex trying to get rid of players as well. You know, people again, dead simplicity. Well, just get rid of Ajeti, just get rid of Barkas, and that's where Michael Nicholson comes in again. So if you want rid of somebody, how much are you prepared to lose on those players? Do those players want to go? Do they want to take wage cuts? Blah blah blah. So Michael Nicholson plays a kind of key part in all this. But as long as he does it behind the scenes, we'll all be happy with that.
Just to pick up on what Tony said as well, Jim, and you kind of touched on it earlier about the balance between spending and watching your money. What's your position on Jota and Carter Vickers? I mean, I assume you would, like most Celtic fans, would love to see them sign permanently, but do you think, taking everything into consideration, that it would be a wise move to splash the cash on them now?
I always look for value for money, as opposed to talking about the money thing. People will say £6 million is a good deal. Is it? Is it good value for money? I don't know. I think they've both been very, very good this season. If we got them for nothing, sign them tomorrow. If we got them for 3, sign them tomorrow. Is 6 pushing it a wee bit? Only Michael Nicholson will know the answer to that question. And the thing about value for money, I think Carter Vickers has been very, very solid this year. Very dependable guy. He is your kind of 7 or 8 out of 10 every single game. But I think we need a dominant centre half. We need a big centre half, and I think he's a wee bit short in terms of that. I think we need somebody who can dominate at both ends of the pitch. One of the things that we've noticed this season, that we don't do very well from corner kicks. So Carter Vickers hasn't scored, to my knowledge, I don't think he scored a goal with his head from a corner kick. You'd be looking for your centre half to maybe chip in with, by this stage of the season, 3-4 goals, maybe 6-7 goals by the end of the season, maybe. Hasn't done that. Why has he not done that? I don't think he's maybe that dominant in there. And I think in the league that we are in, given our major rivals, a lot of this season might just come down to set pieces. And that's how we lost the last Glasgow derby. That's my concern about the next one. So do you say for £6 million, Carter Vickers is good value for money? I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. Could you get better value for £6 million? I think the answer to that is yes. Who they are, I don't know. But from the Carter Vickers point of view, he's been very solid, very dependable. He's a young guy. He's got resale value. I think he ticks a lot of boxes to be willing to spend £6 million. So for me, I'd like to sign him. I don't know whether 6 million is the right number or not. Jota, because Jota's an attacking player, I think I'd be a bit more inclined to take a risk and spend £6 million on Jota rather than Carter Vickers. Could you get better value elsewhere? Of course you could. Who are they? Don't know. It's not my job. That's Michael Nicholson's job to know this kind of stuff. Because I think one of the guys who's been, much maligned this year is Starfelt. And I think he's been okay. I think he's had a lot of good games. But the thing is, if you're a forward, you could miss 9 chances and score 1 goal and you're a hero. If you're a defender, you could put 9 great tackles and make 1 mistake and you lose the game and you're the villain. And that's happened with Starfelt this season, where there's been some games he's made bad mistakes and we've lost goals, and then people will comment things like, he should never kick another ball and all this sort of stuff. And I said at the time that we signed Starfelt, he cost £4.5 million. Could we have got better value somewhere else? I think we could have. I still think we could have got better value for £4.5 million. So I think you've always got to look at this stuff as if this was your money and you were going to spend your money, it's dead easy to say you should spend your money, but if it's your own money and you were in charge of Celtic, you have to be careful with the money. For me, Jota for £6 million, I think I would say yes. Carter Vickers, I'm not 100% sure. I think we need that dominant centre half. If Julian comes back and becomes that dominant centre half, then we've got the dominant centre half. If he doesn't, I think we need that dominant centre half. And if you don't have a lot of money, then I think we'd be better looking for a more dominant centre half. But the question people never get asked really is that If you said, do you want to sign Carter Vickers and Jota? The answer to that is yes. I'll pose you a different question. If you don't want to sign one of them, who would you sign?
Oh, Tony, I'll put that to you first.
And
Out
why?
the two, who would you go for?
And why?
That's a no-brainer. You'd sign Jota.
Yeah. yeah.
Right. But I think you're being a bit harsh. I think for 12.5 million for the pair, I actually think that does represent value for money, Jim. I really do. I've got to be honest. I don't think you would get much better for the money. That's my thing, and I think Celtic should snap up both of those deals. I think Carter Vickers has been a revelation since he came. I really do. I get the dominant centre half and he could chip in with more goals. I get that, but he is playing for the team that have conceded the least amount of goals in the league, isn't he? So first and foremost, I want him to be a defender. If he can score goals, bonus. But I think 12.5 million for the pair is outstanding value for money. And if I'm Celtic, I understand why they'd be willing to push those deals through. And also the players are really, really happy at this minute in time. They look happy. They're playing very good football. And they're playing in a team that's successful, might enjoy it. You know, you go out and try and sign another defender, then you're going to have to assimilate them into that squad and stuff. I just think there's pros and cons. I'm not negating anything that you've said. I take on board what you've said, but I think at this moment in time that Celtic would be well intended to try and get those deals over the line with those two players, because I think they could keep them happy. I think they both realise that Celtic could be on the cusp of something special with Ange. Yeah, and it's like every position, as you said, Jim, could you get it better? Yeah, you probably could. But you want to build a team, a winning team, a successful team with a winning mentality. And these guys have been part of that, winning the League Cup. And I just think they want to keep continuing on this kind of magic carpet ride that Ange is taking them on and taking Celtic on and the supporters. And I just think that for 12.5 million for those two, to me, that would make great business sense, because the two of them would have resale value big time if you're looking further down the line. So I would be really chuffed if Celtic concluded those deals in January, or even if they waited till the summer and they both signed. I would be happy with that. But there's no immediate rush because I've got the options to buy. But I would be looking at maybe seeing what the guys' thoughts were on committing in January, because I think it would boost the team as well in terms of just morale. I think there's real momentum being built here at Celtic, and I think if those two came in permanently, then it would be another resurge.
Well, I think he's one of the best players. Don't get me wrong. I'm just I think that from a kind of fan's point of view, we see him every week. He's really good by him, and I think if you're a Michael Nicholson or whoever's doing the scouting for the club just now, if there's a Norwegian centre half who's played 30 games for Norway, who's 6'4", and we get him for nothing, does that represent better value for money? That's all I'm saying. And I think it's kind of having that kind of knowledge, and I think that's where we've maybe fallen down with our scouting in the past. But we've jumped in and signed. So if you take something like Laxalt last year, for example, we're never going to sign him because he was rubbish. No disrespect, Laura. He was rubbish. Right?
The knowledge of our scouting, Jim, has brought us to Carter Vickers. So
I totally get that.
Knowledge of our scouting, and we've identified Carter Vickers. So
totally get that. But one assumes we've got a database of all the players in the world out there, and whose contracts are coming to an end, and how much it might cost to pay them, etc., etc. And that's for me not about money. It's more about value for money. And then looking around and thinking, well, maybe I think Carter Vickers has been one of our best players this season. And if you sign him for a couple of million, I'd sign him. I'm looking at this with my accountant's hat on and thinking, money's kind of tight. And I think money is tight. I think we can have, spend. If we get a decent amount of money for a Yeti and Barkas, you want to reinvest that in Carter Vickers. That's the kind of games I'm kind of playing in my head, that we do this kind of stuff. We don't know the numbers behind the scenes. And that's why I was given the question about if you decide one, who would you sign? Because that kind of teases some things out, I think. Carter Vickers has been great. If we sign him for 6 million, I'll be delighted if we sign him. I'm playing devil's advocate here a wee bit, just by saying, well,
I get that.
Who are they? Because what you then do as football fans, you then look around and you say, you can get John Souttar for nothing. discuss John Souttar for nothing and pretty low wages, or £6 million for Carter Vickers and big wages. So where's your balance in that there? Maybe there's somebody out there who's better than Souttar that costs $1 million. You know what I mean? So
I get that.
Good debate. That's what it's about.
Yeah,
debate.
Of course. Yeah, we're not going to fall out with it.
No yet.
Well, I'll bring this particular part of the show to a close by just briefly stating I would go for Jota as well, but that's just the child in me that loves a trickery kind of winger player.
Okay,
out there.
here we go.
I find
Barkas or a
singing
Yeti?
centre half boring.
Who would you keep, Barkas or a Yeti? This is today's game. Right?
Job lot, Jim. Job lot.
I tell you something though, we're not getting much
None of
more
the
agreement in the comments. I'm just going to read out two comments to you that just sort of sum up the situation Celtic fans are in just now. So Kookaburra on YouTube has said, the excitement with the 3 Japanese boys is because of Kyogo. We need to be patient if they don't hit the ground running like Kyogo. And I think that's a fair point. But that's followed up not long after by an architect who says this squad will peak at the end of the season, firing on all cylinders, and Ange will have his eye on the Conference League title. So we're, two ends of a spectrum there, both of which are fair, I think, but it'll remain to be seen. Let's move on to a much less contentious topic, which is Lee Griffiths. Tony, I'll come to you first on this. James McPake was quoted, I don't have the source in front of me, but he was quoted as saying that conversations are ongoing between Dundee and Celtic about potentially returning Lee Griffiths during the transfer window, cutting short what has ultimately been a very unsuccessful loan spell with Dundee. Now, he left Celtic under a bit of a cloud, which I'm not want to go into on the show today, because I think, it's not a conversation for a football show, quite frankly, but keeping it to football and keeping it to Lee Griffiths as a player, what does this potential return to Celtic show you about his ongoing situation in Scottish football, and what would you say are the kind of outcomes that you could draw from it? What's the action you think Celtic should take?
We spoke in the group chat, didn't we? And I think Jim nailed it with a phrase he used yesterday's men, he said, about the likes of Soro and Griffiths and Henderson. I don't think you can put it any better than that. You can all the hoo-ha and the circus surrounding Lee Griffiths. I think the Celtic supporters' goodwill has evaporated towards him. I think lots of people's patience has finally snapped with him, and he is one of these players who you just wish somebody could have gotten through to him, because there's a footballer in there. He can score goals, as he's proven in the past, and I'm talking about his football ability. But I think it's time. I think Celtic are going in a completely different and opposite direction, and Lee Griffiths just doesn't feature in that. I think Ange knows it, and I think, as James McPake has also found out, to his not cost, but Dundee took a chance on him when a lot of people wouldn't, and they've realised, the penny's just no drop now. I think also that Lee maybe needs some help in terms of issues out with football, and hopefully he can get that, and he can maybe resurrect his career somewhere and get back to what he does best, which is scoring goals. But I don't think that'll be at Celtic, because the direction that Celtic are heading in, I think Lee Griffiths is now in that slipstream, and I don't think Ange will be, talk about Jim saying earlier about being ruthless. I don't think Ange will give a second glance or not be ruthless in this matter. I just think Griffiths' time has came and gone at Celtic, sadly, because he's still, when you still look at him, he's still one of the best goal scorers the club has had in many a year. But just off the field, for some reason, he just couldn't get his head in the game off the field, sadly.
Jim, there was a lot of conversation around Lee Griffiths. People on this podcast, on other podcasts that I've listened to, would often talk about, on his day, Lee Griffiths is a great player. If he gets himself sorted, he's a great player. Does the failure of the move to Dundee put paid to that conversation for you? Is his time in Scottish football coming to an end now, or do you think there's still a chance for him, if not at Celtic, perhaps elsewhere, to resurrect what's left of his career?
I think, unfortunately, from a Celtic point of view, he is yesterday's man. Definitely yesterday's man. I don't think Ange would have let him go to Dundee if he thought he could have done a job for us. And I know you've said, Laura, that you don't want to talk about the issues that maybe led to that, but I think, as I said, if Ange would have, because at that point in time we had very few bodies in the team, so we needed players, and I think the thing you were talking about, I think he was found not guilty of whatever he was meant to have done. I think he was tried by Twitter again, the social media stuff. So Ange didn't want him. So if he comes back, I can't see Ange changing his mind. I think, once upon a time, I was a huge fan of Lee Griffiths. I think 99% of Celtic fans were huge fans. I think this time last year maybe went 50-50. I think he divided the support. And I think after the start of this season, I think the vast majority are now saying, nah, maybe your time is over. But on his day, best finisher in Scotland, easily the best finisher in Scotland, in my humble opinion. Give him a chance to score a goal. Put him in a good team with good players and give him the service. He'll score goals all day. And we have discussed him on the podcast over the last year and a half, however long this has been going for. And what happened last season is when Celtic needed goals, they called for Lee Griffiths. The cup final, he was the guy that they called on, bang goal. He takes the first penalty in the cup final. He came on for Scotland in that qualifier with a few minutes to go of extra time to take the first penalty kick. That shows how good he is, how mentally tough he is. Then again, you look, well, if he's that mentally tough on the field, why is he so poor mentally off the field? Because he doesn't act like a footballer should in terms of his physical diet, in terms of some of his mental issues that he has in doing certain things. I agree with Tony. I think he needs a bit of help, but you know what, it's not a field I know anything about. But sticking strictly to the football stuff, if Ange had wanted him, he wouldn't have went to Dundee in the first place. I think Ange is quite ruthless. I think Ange won't want anyone who's disruptive. And as Tony alluded to, I don't think he would fit in Ange's system anyway. So even if you disregard all that stuff, if he doesn't fit into the system, and it is night and day now. If you compare somebody like Kyogo, who really humble guy, works really hard for the team, lovely, likeable wee guy, lovely, and then you bring in Lee Griffiths, who's kind of the opposite of that. So you wonder how that would fuse together. Before you know it, Lee's got him out for a pint in the West End. him and Kyogo and Declan would be down the West End. Kebabs. So from an Ange point of view, he's trying to run a kind of tight ship in there. He wants guys who are going to train hard, work hard, and when they're not involved in the football, don't get involved in any nonsense off the part. And I don't think on the evidence of what we've seen so far, you can trust Lee not to get involved in nonsense off the part. But as he showed me that goal last week or 2 weeks or whatever it was against Aberdeen, was it?
Aberdeen, yeah.
Stunning. So that's what he's capable of. He's perfectly capable of that. But somebody needs to put his arm around his shoulder and try and get him back on track. So hopefully there's some sort of future for him. But I think from a Celtic point of view, he's certainly yesterday's man.
I think that's fair. I think, like we've said before, I was of a mind that even before some of the off the field controversies came to light, that he was potentially yesterday's man even before that, and that just kind of put paid to things. I don't think Ange is the type of man to forget, and he certainly won't forget the position that he was put in when he first came into Celtic Football Club, having to deal with matters other than football. So
I think also, Laura, things change very quickly, because just before lockdown, that was the memory we all had. That game against St Mirren, he scores the hat trick. He's totally on fire. Him and Eddie scores his hat trick. He gets the ball. He's 3 fingers up. That's not that long ago. He was capable of that. And then things have just turned very, very quickly. So, and also the fact that because of the pandemic, who knows that maybe this is hitting him a bit harder than other people. Who knows? Anyway, so.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I don't think we can sit in judgment of anybody throughout the pandemic and how it might have affected them. Talking of yesterday's men, Tony, as we see here, Shaw and Soro are potentially going to follow Henderson out the door. Shaw has had very little time to make an impact, wasn't really an Ange signing, had signed for the club beforehand, so I think it's clear why he might be on his way out the door. But Soro is a strange one in some ways. He's potentially, ironically, getting the band back together with Patrick Klimala and Lewis Morgan at Red Bull New York, which, as somebody said in the chat, I don't know what kind of things we are showing them to suggest that they're building a good team, but who knows? But looking at Soro, as you touched on him before, took a while to get into the Celtic team, freshened things up when he did come in at the time when we needed a lift, but it's all kind of gone asunder, as you like to say. What about his time at Celtic has gone so wrong, do you think? Is it just a case of that he doesn't fit? Is his ability not up to scratch? Where do you think he's gone wrong?
I go back to what Jim said earlier. When you play for the Celtic first team, you've clearly got ability, right? You know, so to use words like dud and all that, it's just disparaging towards him. It's disrespectful. But I think when Soro came in, we were looking for something. You know, we were looking for the Scott Brown heir apparent, and he slammed into a couple of tackles and he did a couple of good things, scored a good goal against Dundee United, and that was it. The label was pinned on him with Scott Brown's heir apparent. You know, so people could, you know, he could do no wrong. And all of a sudden, people started to actually watch him in depth and pick up on deficiencies in his game. And it wasn't that he just wasn't conforming to any system. He seemed to be going out there and doing his own thing. And he was just reckless and he was clattering into people. And, you know, and you thought, okay, he's young, he's raw. But he did that on a consistent basis, which led you to believe that I don't think players, I would never label the fact that they don't listen to managers and instructions, but some players are renegades and loose cannons, and he was proving himself to be too much of a loose cannon because he was copping early bookings and then putting himself and the team in jeopardy, you know, and managers were having to take him off or sub him, or he was walking that tightrope, and you were thinking, he's just a missed time tackle away from sitting in the stands along beside us. You know, and you just can't have players like that who just play their own game. And as I say, I don't accuse them of not listening, but you say to yourself, what are you doing? What part are you playing in this team, or what part of the system are you actually falling into here? And I don't know. He just, for as much as his style shone brightly for a wee while, it quickly fizzled out. And again, what Jim said at the start, I don't think the loss of Soro is great. I don't see him fitting into a Celtic team under Ange, and Ange clearly doesn't fancy him because he's had umpteen chances to play him, and he hasn't given him that opportunity, has he? And I think he played him in Betis, didn't he? Away in Spain.
Yeah.
In the 2-goal lead, and Soro was kind of running about like a headless chicken, picked up an early booking, you know, didn't a man for one of the goals, you know. So these are big games. These are the games that Ange says Celtic want to test themselves, and you've got a player there who just, I don't know what he did that night, but he wasn't fitting into Ange's system, and I think Ange took that on board. I don't think he's featured a lot since, if at all. And if Celtic can get any kind of money for Soro and ship him off to New York Red Bulls, then great. I won't lose any sleep over it. As I say, I just think the club under Ange is heading in a totally different direction than what these players can offer.
I think that's fair. Jim, John Sweeney on I don't know if it's that John Sweeney, but on YouTube has commented very much in line with what Tony's saying, that Soro's basically just too rash in the tackle, always likely to pick up a booking before half time, and that you can't really afford that. Is that what it comes down to for Soro with you, or is there more to it than that? Is the reason that he can't get into the team?
I think he showed when he first came in, he's okay. I think he's certainly got the potential to do well. I think he's got some rough edges, and if he can sort these rough edges, then he'd be quite a good player. But I think a couple of things. One is every game's a must-win game. for Celtic. So it's not a matter of being a 7 or 8 out of 10. You have to be that every single game. And I don't think you can depend on him to be a 7 or 8 out of 10 out every single game. Because he is a bit headstrong. He is a bit impulsive. He does lack a bit of discipline. Part of that's perfect. But, it's kind of... Those are things that you can't depend on if you're a manager. You need to know that you're going to go out there and put in that 7 or 8 out of 10 performance. And if he's saying, I'm not very sure if he's going to do this or not, and this is a huge game, and I can't depend on him, and I'm pretty sure Ange, because the thing about Ange, for me, that I was thinking this other day, I was chatting to somebody about this, I said, Ange to me is a bit like kind of, the analogy I would use is a bit of an iceberg that we only see the top of the iceberg, the bit that sticks out the water. What team does he play and what subs does he make? And below the water, there's like, every week he must be making hundreds of decisions, thousands of decisions that we don't see. So we have no idea what's happening down there. So why is Wilson good this year? That's because Ange must have taken the time to make all these decisions for him, So Soro, one imagines that Ange is taking Soro aside all season and said, look, rough edge, stop. Plays him the next game and doesn't do it. So I think you've got only so many chances of doing that, because I'm assuming, on the evidence of what I've seen so far, I think Ange is putting that amount of time and effort into every individual player. And at some point he'll make a decision to say that, does he make it above the line or below the line? You and Henderson, you're out, you're below. Soro, I think you're below the line as well. So because of the lack of game time he's been getting, because of his erratic performances, because he's not been a 7 or 8 out of 10, I think he's not going to make that cut. And for me, it's just that simple, because there's better players there.
You look at all the midfielders we have, or the 3 midfielders that Ange likes, McGregor, Turnbull and Rogic. Every one of them's a disciplinarian, aren't they? They don't go flying into tackles. They don't pick up needless bookings. No, they conform to the strategy, to the plan. They're trusting the process. Well, there's no real erratic form in any of them, is there?
No.
And they are, as Jim says, 7, 8, 9 out of 10 every week. Reliable, trustworthy, dependable. When you have guys like Soro who are not dependable, and as Jim says, it's too much of a liability. You can't have a liability in your engine room. And that's
also,
sorry,
on you go. No, I was going to say, I thought he's also quite a small guy as well, and we're quite a small team.
Yeah.
So a bit more physicality in them. So if you'd had we'll do it again. If you'd a choice between Wanyama and Soro, you would go for Wanyama because he's bigger physically. Mentally, I think he's better as well, more consistent. Well, he was back then. I don't know what he's like now. But in terms of the type of player you would want, I'd want a more kind of Wanyama type player, I think, than a Soro. And Wanyama was quite disciplined in terms of what he did. So I don't think Soro makes the Ange line. That's my new phrase. He doesn't make the Ange line. So he has to go.
And Scott Brown wasn't the tallest, but
physicality, but he did physicality.
And he had leadership qualities.
Yeah.
He could drive the team on. He was a beating heart of that team. I just didn't see those kind of strengths in Soro either. He could maybe put up with his lack of discipline here and there. But the kind of sum of the parts, but sadly, no, for me.
Yesterday's man, again.
Jim, I'll come back to you on Ange's line. Who else is at the club that you don't think meets that line? Who would be heading for the exit door in your book?
I think a lot to do with luck again and getting a run in the team, and I think it's harsh to maybe judge. Soro's had loads of chances, so you can make a judgment on that. I don't want to get into another Mikey Johnson debate with Tony, but there's an interesting stat Alan Morrison put up a couple of weeks ago, and I think he said something like, don't think Mikey Johnson's played 290 minutes back to back and doesn't think he's been involved in 3 successive games. So I think you need time to judge players. If we're bringing in players who are better than Mikey Johnson, then Mikey Johnson only falls below the line, I think. A Yeti falls below that line, I think. How long have we got? Sorry. How long to go? I think Bain falls below the line. I'm not sure about Barkas because, I think, again, get back to the stats. And the stats can say things you think, really? Is that what it says? And again, I think the stat the other day said that Barkas is no worse than Joe Hart in terms of the stats they were looking at. So
I can tell you for a fact that's what it said, because I think that was said to me on a show, and I was kind of like, wow.
Aye, so I think that's what the objective data tells you. But also what the objective data doesn't tell you is the influence the player has in those around them. And that's the point I make without going back to my Abada conversation, was that, yeah, he made good stats, but in terms of his impact elsewhere in the team, wasn't too clever. Joe Hart's impact in the team has been massive, even though his stats are the same as Baka's. Baka's hasn't had that influence in the team. So that's something you don't measure in the stats. And I think the stats are brilliant because they're objective. They'd maybe tell you things like that you wouldn't have realised. But all they do is try and inform, I think, your own subjective view of things. So Ange will know where that line sits. So let's say it's 27 players, whatever it is. There's the Ange line and who makes it. And obviously there's the kind of juggling of where they play in the pitch type of things. So you can't have like rid of all your left backs, whatever. You know, so there's a bit of a balance there. And again, that's about Ange making decisions. And he'll be doing this on a daily basis. He'll be trying to wrestle with that kind of stuff. You know, who do I keep? Who do I lose? I'm going to keep him. But actually, the reason I'm going to keep him is because I think there's a player there. And I'm going to spend the time and the effort with that player to make sure he's a better player. So those are all the things that we don't see behind the scenes. And only Ange will know, obviously, where the Ange line sits. So I think the people that we've had a chat about today, and I said it straight away when that WhatsApp group, those three are yesterday's men. They won't make that line. And I'm sure there's lots of others if we had another hour to kind of go over who else falls below the Ange line.
I'm sure Deco know where the line is as well.
Deco know, aye. He'll know where the line is. Aye.
He's above it for the record for now. Anyway,
definitely.
That's why, you know what I mean?
So, there's a kind of mate line.
Aye, yeah.
Deco's above the mate line.
If you're above the mate line, it's a positive mate. If you're below the mate line, it's no mate.
You're yesterday's mate. Aye, definitely.
Tony, let's finish on a positive today. We've talked about a lot of the exits and a lot of the reasons for those exits, but obviously what we've had is 3 very high-profile entrances to the club. One still to be unveiled officially, as far as I'm aware, in Rio Hatate, but Yusaki Deguchi and Daisen Maeda, who I feel sorry for, because his first impression of Glasgow, as far as Twitter pictures are concerned, seems to have been a walk down Sauchiehall Street on Hogmanay, which I wouldn't wish on anybody. But apart from what we've talked about for the positive light in which it paints the club for doing the business as quickly as they did, what else do you think it brings to us in terms of those players? What are you looking forward to seeing from them?
I'm just looking forward to seeing how they fit into Ange's system. Ange's targeted these 3 players for a reason. These guys have been linked with the club since August, September, since Ange came in. Now the 3 of them are here. I never ever thought that Celtic would get all 3. I thought they might get 1 or 2 maximum. But to bring all 3 in the same day, that shows you how forceful Ange was in those months leading up to Hogmanay. I want these 3 players. And even speaking to the Japanese journalist Dan Orlotsu and Vince Rugari, who said that Ideguchi was the surprise element and all of that, but they're saying he's been bought for a reason, because he'll fit into Ange's system. Now this is where I want to see my manager at work and at operation at large, with the bigger picture, that right, okay, he's not bringing them halfway across the world to sit on the bench. Granted, they might not all hit the ground running like Kyogo, but he sees them fitting into a Celtic team, which, if he's laser focused, is becoming more ruthless and ruthless as time goes on, and he's bringing in guys to fit into a system. People talk about the bonus of shirt sales and all that, and merchandising and all that. I'm just not caring about that. He brought in 3 really good footballers in his mind who can do a job for Celtic. That's what concerns me. Now I want to see how they fit in, where they fit in. We don't know, they've all got favoured positions, but people are starting to speculate about maybe Hatate playing that inverted full-back role on the left. You know, either Gucci being in the middle at the expense of possibly Turnbull or whatever. I don't know. I'll leave that to the manager. Maeda somewhere up front, rotating with Jota left and right, depending on how he sees it. But it's just exciting, isn't it? You're just trusting to see them play. It was such a real kind of burst of positivity on Hogmanay when you saw all three coming in, and the first thought was, I wonder what they're like as players. And people can tell you all you want. You can watch the show reels and you can make up your mind and think they're a good player. You'll make up your own mind when you see them on the pitch. But if you're trusting the manager, and the board have clearly trusted the manager, trusted his judgment with Kyogo, I'm trusting his judgment with these three players as well. And I don't think it will be long before all three make an impact.
Hoping so. Jim, to pick up on what Tony said there, lots of people talk about the transfer window in which we signed, forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but I think it was Soro, Ajeti, Turnbull. There was a Barkas was another one. There was a transfer window, I think, summer before last. Time is merging into one, where we signed all these players and everybody was very excited about the prospect, and we know what's happened with a lot of those players. They've turned out not to be great signings. Do you see this as slightly different? Do you trust that because, as Tony says, the deliberate nature in which he's made those signings, does that give you more faith that they are going to work?
I think every signing is a risk. You don't know. Even the ones you look at and you think, well, that's going to work out. And if you back to last season, Shane Duffy, everyone has said that's exactly who we need. He'll be great. 80 caps for Ireland, da. And for a number of reasons, it didn't work out particularly well. But that's how things work out. I think maybe we've gone a wee bit over the top with this one, because the kind of theory is Kyogo's brilliant and he's Japanese. These guys are Japanese. Ipso facto, these guys are brilliant. When in fact the reality literally be that one of them's brilliant and one of them's good and one of them's kind of so-so. It's how things might work out depending on the circumstances. Are they first team ready? Don't know. Will they play every week? Don't know. Will they get a wee bit of luck? Don't know. So I think it's great, as I said at the start of the podcast, that we brought the three guys in so quickly. The guys that Ange obviously won't, so they're definitely Ange's signings. If they all play in the first team at the same time, that'd be brilliant, because he obviously has confidence in the three of them. But as I said, like any signing you make, it's a risk. How will they take to playing this type of football? And it's maybe different if you're a defender or a midfield player. Will you get on with your teammates? How will you find the language barrier? Da-di-da. Kyogo has been phenomenal. So he set the bar really, really high. And I think it's a bit much to expect these three guys are going to come in and hit that line, straight away. So I think we have to give them a bit of time to settle in. Hopefully, as I said, they are first team ready. Hopefully, they hit the ground running. Hopefully, they score the goals they're meant to score. I'm not going to try and say their names because I'm still struggling with Postecoglou. But hopefully, they do hit the ground running and the three of them are good signings. And hopefully, we're not yet finished in this window, whether it's Carter Vickers or Jota or someone else, because there are parts of the team I think need to be strengthened. I don't think these three guys are addressing those particular parts of the team. But certainly, it's dead exciting them having them coming in. And I think it's been mentioned earlier this week on the podcast. We look back at other iconic football things like the three Dutch guys coming to AC Milan and all this kind of, and how excited the fans got by that. So good to be excited, but I think a wee bit of kind of caution that maybe our expectations are a wee bit high. But hopefully they come in, hit the ground running, win the first couple of games, and we take things from there. Because a lot depends on this game on the 2nd of February. I think our season hinges on that. So hopefully, because we were down to the sort of bare bones there. And these guys, we needed reinforcements. They're in, and hopefully we get another couple in before next week. So hey ho. I
have to say, I had a sharp intake of breath there when you mentioned the 2nd of February, and I've not, to my knowledge, had COVID. So we'll see how that goes. Tony, an easy way around the language barrier. A couple more players, and we'll just end up having to get Callum McGregor and Joe Hart to learn Japanese, and we'll be sorted. But Jim raises an interesting point there with the point about Kyogo being such a massive factor in our opinion of these other players coming in. Now there is a more simplistic view that says that we're kind of joining the dots and saying a Japanese player means another Japanese player will be good. For me, it stretches a little bit beyond that. It's more about the fact that the last time he was this desperate to bring a player in was Kyogo, and look at the success that's been. He's desperate to bring these players in, obviously, so your brain goes to, well, there must be a reason for that. Do you think that's fair?
Aye, you're trusting the manager's judgment here, implicitly. We don't know anything about these players. As I say, you can watch the show reels and you can make up your mind based on that. But anybody can look good in a show reel. You will find out how good they are once they take to the stage, take to the pitch, but if you're going to trust the manager based on Kyogo, then he's clearly identified that those areas in our team need strengthened. And he's got in 3 of the best from that league, in his opinion. So you're all in on the manager now. And at this moment in time, I don't think anybody would doubt his judgment. But you will form your own opinion when you see them in the flesh. And it might take them a wee while to get up to speed and get settled. But what you do, or what you think, is that you kind of think the manager knows what he's talking about and knows a player when he sees one. So, yeah, we're, as I say, everybody's invested in the manager now, and we're excited to have these guys, but that excitement will soon dwindle if they're rotten. You know what I mean?
I think that's the point. No, I think that's the point in terms of if Kyogo had been poor.
Yeah.
The fans said, don't go near the Japanese market because it's rubbish.
Exactly.
So we're going to hang our hat on one player.
Yeah, we're hanging a hat on the manager's judgment of these players coming from that league. So,
But equally so, he could have came and not played well for a number of reasons, like a kind of Shane Duffy.
Yeah.
So do you then tar the whole of Japanese football with the fact that Kyogo's not very good? And that's the thing that I'm basically concerned about, going over the top of it, saying Kyogo great, Japanese great, these guys are Japanese, we've won a watch here. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, correct. And we will see how it goes. The jury's out, but we're trusting the manager on this one big time.
It's exciting. It is exciting. Yes.
He wanted them, he's got them. So let's see what they got.
Yep.
Let's wait and see what happens. Indeed, I think I can say for all 3 of us sitting here and everybody watching, and thank you to everybody for watching today. We're all itching for the football to get back because I think we're all missing it already. So with that said, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been a Celtic State of Mind, and we'll see you again very soon.
Cheers, Laura.
Yes.